Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Ninen. Thank you for joining us. Sources tell CBS News President Trump is laying the groundwork to declare a national emergency. And that step could potentially unlock funds to pay for a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border and bring the partial government shutdown to a close. The shutdown, now in day 21, is tied for the longest in history. President Trump has been making his case for a border wall with a primetime address, a trip to the border, and with a White House roundtable event today. But the president and his advisors now see an emergency declaration as the best option for building the border wall. Such a move is expected to trigger a long court battle, and even members of the president's party are skeptical. Here's Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley this morning.
The president is threatening emergency action, national emergency declaration. I don't think he should do that. I think it's a bad precedent, and it contravenes the power of the purse that comes from the elected representatives of the people.
But in a sign of how the matter is dividing Republicans, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said yesterday it is time for President Trump to use emergency powers to fund the construction of a border wall barrier. Graham ended his statement with 4 words: "I hope it works." Graham, who originally opposed such a declaration, said that there are no other options.
I always said it would be the last resort. We're there. There's no pathway forward that I can see, so the president believes he has his power. Seems to me the only way left is for him to exercise that authority. I don't see any action in the Congress.
CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid is at the White House, and here in New York, CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns. So, Paula, on CBS this morning, you said that an emergency declaration from the president would keep lawyers busier than actual construction workers. Can you walk us through the possible hurdles in that approach?
It's true. Declaring a national emergency is a tool for a president to do what needs to be done in a crisis to free up funds. And here the president believes what needs to happen is that a wall needs to be built in response to what he is trying to describe as a crisis at the border. But it's that word crisis. That's where the legal challenges are going to begin. Democrats have already vowed that they will sue if the president attempts to sidestep Congress, because by declaring a national emergency, he no longer has to go through them, and he could use unspent Pentagon funds to start building his wall. But they argue that in court they will say, look, this is not a crisis. There is no emergency. There's no exigency. The facts on the ground have not changed. This is something that could potentially go to the Supreme Court, Rena, which has traditionally extended quite a bit of deference to the president's assessment in national security matters. But even if the president was to prevail at the Supreme Court, he would likely face another round of legal challenges from property owners along the border where he wants to build this wall.
Caitlin, you know, one Democratic aide told the Washington Post that actually declaring an emergency would be an elegant way out of this. What do both sides have to gain at this point?
Well, both sides are at a standstill. We saw earlier this week the president walk out of a meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Both parties came out to talk to reporters with different views of what actually happened in that meeting. And as Lindsey Graham pointed to, they feel like they are at a last resort here. But there is a division really within both parties. You have some Republicans like Lindsey Graham calling for this. You have others who are very concerned not only about the legal challenges, but about what this would mean constitutionally for this president. Some of the more conservative push back to that argument. Then you have Democrats who are by and large united around opposition to giving the president money for that border wall, but other more moderate Democrats asking what else can be done. Maybe we can talk more about other security measures or perhaps even upping that number. But with both sides at a standstill, the president especially dug in at this point. It looks like nothing is moving except for talk again of this national emergency.
We heard, Caitlin, from Senator Grassley just a short time ago. You know, Republicans were very critical of President Obama on immigration for using executive powers to push it through. I mean, aren't they doing the same thing here?
Exactly. Remember that pen and phone item that President Obama talked about? We have seen different views on this from Republicans, which I think is very noteworthy because they were especially critical of President Obama for using executive powers, particularly on the issue of immigration. We have seen this president use executive authority on on a number of issues, but Republicans by and large have commented that they like the way that he is doing that in terms of loosening regulations on a variety of different issues. Here, though, there is this issue of hypocrisy, and you're hearing that a little bit, though, from Chuck Grassley in that bite that you just played.
Paul, I want to ask you about something else. We know the president's former fixer, Michael Cohen, agreed to testify before Congress next month. The president said that he's not worried. What are you watching for when he testifies publicly?
Oh, this is the first witness called by emboldened House Democrats, and it's a pretty big one. Cohen's proximity to the president, his family, and his business during his time in the Trump organization, it really does make him, especially because he's cooperating with federal prosecutors and the special counsel, it makes him one of the biggest potential legal threats to the president, his family, and his business. What I'm going to look for very specifically during this hearing is what Cohen can say about exactly how the president allegedly directed these hush money payments to his mistresses. Cohen has testified that the president directed him to pay these women in an effort to help his chances during the election. So I want to know more about that. I want to know, was the president saying that he was specifically concerned that more allegations of affairs, especially after the Access Hollywood tape, could hurt his chances in the polls? Because if there is evidence of that, that makes it more likely that this could have potentially been a campaign finance violation. But Rena, we have to remember, Michael Cohen does have credibility issues. He's about to head to prison for 3 years for crimes including lying to the government, lying to Congress. He's also, in addition, lied to the American people. So he does have a lot of credibility problems. And I think the president and his allies, they will come out around the time of this hearing and ask, why should you believe anything this man says? He has admitted to lying to Congress last time he was here. Why would now be any different?
So, Caitlin, Paula touched on the credibility issues, but we also know Democrats have control of the House. They've got a great deal of authority here. Do we know what their approach will be in regards to this Russia investigation, which is separate from what Mueller's doing as well, right?
Well, one of the most important things about Congress, or at least the House, changing power is that it gives not only a megaphone and a platform for some of Trump's top critics, but it also gives them legislative tools, potentially subpoena power if they choose to use it, to call in new witnesses, call in old witnesses, and kind of dig in again on this investigation. So we have been looking at these 5 Democratic chairs of various committees who will have some kind of oversight over this involving the Russia investigation, the Oversight Committee, of course, being one of them. A lot of the chairs of the various committees have exercised caution in moving forward with anything related to this, saying that they want to appease the appetite for oversight and transparency, but they don't want to go too far. They don't want to overreach. We have heard a lot of interest, though, in Cohen for the reasons that Paula just mentioned, and because, remember, when Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress, Intelligence Committee Chairman, now Chairman Adam Schiff, said that there was concern that Democrats had that other members of Trump's orbit or other witnesses that they had talked to, either publicly or privately, may have lied to them as well. So I think you're going to see this theme go on, but the Oversight Committee will be chaired by Congressman Cummings, who has exercised a lot of caution, at least publicly, but has said that he has an interest in hearing from Cohen, and he believes that the public wants to hear from him as well.
You know, Paula, the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, told The Hill that he wants, and I'm quoting here, to correct special counsel Mueller's final report before it's actually released to Congress or the public. I mean, I've never heard of anybody trying to do this when you're investigating something, you have a separate entity doing this. But what do you make of this? And do you think that could actually happen?
No, that's not a thing. The president's attorneys are certainly welcome to issue a rebuttal report. They could even ask the attorney general to redact certain things, but it's not the way the justice system works. You can't have a defendant or a possible suspect go in and change what prosecutors or investigators have found. In fact, that sounds a lot like obstruction of justice. But, Irina, it's important that our viewers understand what this final report will be. The only requirement is that the special counsel compile a findings report, detail everything they've discovered, even if it doesn't amount to criminal charges, and pass it off to the person supervising that. Likely, by the time this is all wrapped up, that will be Attorney General nominee William Barr. And it will be up to him to decide whether or not this is made public. There's no legal requirement for this report to be made public. Another question for William Barr is what happens if there is any evidence of criminal wrongdoing on the behalf of the president. Does he believe, as Rod Rosenstein believed, that you cannot indict a sitting president? If he believes that, he needs to decide whether or not any of that evidence gets passed on to Congress for possible impeachment proceedings. So I think a lot of people have the idea that Mueller is going to come out with this report, somebody's going to come out with a box of reports and start handing them out. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be clean cut. I think there's going to be a lot of litigation around this, and that's what Giuliani, I think, is sort of preparing for. He wants to try to fight and restrict as much of this from becoming public as is possible. But House Democrats, they have said that they will make sure that all of this is public, even if they need to subpoena special counsel Robert Mueller and have him read the report aloud.
All right, Paula, I think it could be a hashtag, no, it's not a thing. Or either that or a weekly segment around here about Washington in general. Paula Reid at the White House, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you both for joining us.